empowerment of youth voices through the regional youth statement. You can only imagine how many more boundaries young professionals have in joining such spaces as COP28 in particular, but in fact, throughout the history of all the high-level climate and nature conservation events. Thus, considering this effort in intergenerational partnerships and youth effort in being present in these spaces, we would like to reflect on the experiences we had in Eastern Europe through Regional Conference on Youth and so much more. Let's move on to the next slide, please. But before that, I would like to start with a story. Us here, participants of the panel, find it particularly important and are thankful, therefore, for being here. In order to enter these spaces, we were allowed and supported with badges. This happened last year before, and from that day onward, magic started to unfold. We happened to meet at a conference on youth that always takes place with support of UNGO, Youth Constituency of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and precedes COPs. Last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, us, the four of us, happened to meet in Sharm el-Sheikh, and from there, a meaningful collaboration began. Having been inspired by participating at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, building that partnership among us, we came to a conclusion that all the learning points and all the inspiration should be brought back to Eastern Europe and enhanced by establishing a regional conference of youth in Eastern Europe that took place earlier this year, end of September, in Warsaw, Poland. Of course, the conference was preceded by months of intense work, developing the program, working on engagement of youth across Eastern Europe, and making sure this day would come with success. This started with collaboration that wouldn't be possible if we all didn't meet in previous COP, if we all were not allowed to a space that enabled us with knowledge, networking opportunities, collaboration, learning, and so much more. And so, before we even move on reflecting on the event, we'd like to thank for the opportunity of being there last year and actually being here this year as well. This is how you enable young people to move on with even more enhanced partnerships. When I'm talking about regional conferences on youth and UNGO, like I mentioned, it's a constituency of UNFCCC, and UNGO has an extensive architecture of events that feed and structure, all feeding together into COY, Conference on Youth. Regional Conference on Youth is therefore a gathering of young professionals in the region, and there are many happening across the world. Ours was the only regional conference on youth that took place in Europe this year. And we're proud that we made it happen. Regional Conference on Youth is not only about a space where people physically meet or that people attend online. Ours, in fact, was a hybrid event. Regional Conference on Youth is also a place for spotlighting youth work, showcasing what is it that young professionals do in the region, enabling them with learning opportunities through, in our case, 3 days of intense program of a conference. Also, a big focus is given on developing joint youth statement. And that is the document that really reflects on thoughts, opinions, and voices of youth of the region in a documented manner. It says the demands, hopes, and aspirations of young people of the region towards the governments and governmental, non-governmental organizations that they call upon acting and engaging with youth on building very specific demands into action. Thank you. With this, in fact, I trust you're very curious to learn of what happened at our COY, and I forward the word. Next slide, please. And I forward the word to Valeria Bondareva and then Yarina Kushnir, please.
Thank you.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, next slide, please. So the year of 2022 was a huge roller coaster. It was filled with hopelessness and despair for obvious reasons. But even amid the horrible things that were going on, we found something. We discovered something very special, and it was the Eastern European climate movement and its remarkable unity. Historical and socio-political context of our country are indeed unique, and it sets us apart as from other regions. So we, as the organizing team, understood that we needed to there was a need to create a platform for young people from Eastern Europe to exchange our knowledge and experience in a space focused on our distinctive challenges, concerns, needs, and opportunities. So it became our goal to organize this space.
Next slide, please. For me and another delegates, this conference became a space where we could attend really interesting workshop on important climate topic and our development as a region, where young people were empowered as a local expert and where we crafted our Eastern European youth statement that we are presenting for you today. And where we established partnership in the region for future collaboration. Next slide, please. Our discussion focused on three main themes. First is post-war recovery of Ukraine for the region resilience. Second, untapped potential of Eastern Europe in sustainable development of the EU. And the third one, my favorite one, it's a nature education and youth leadership development for green transition.
The process of organizing the conference wasn't going smoothly all the time. And honestly, there were some hardships to overcome. But I'm really delighted that ARCO Eastern Europe came true to life, that we did it. And so I would gladly share some of the results with you. Next slide, please. So we managed to gather together 70 participants from 13 different countries: Moldova, Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, Croatia, Estonia, Armenia, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Georgia, Czechia, and Romania. We had speakers and partner organizations from all over the regions, and we left the conference with strong demands brought together by our regional youth statement.
Again, as a delegate, I was really happy to join such an empowered event organized for youth by youth.
Thank you. So, yeah.
I would like to give the word to Vladislav Malashevsky. You've heard about the greatest outcome of the conference, the youth statement. Vladi, please reflect on what's in there.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the floor. Please, next slide. So let's start from what the regional youth statement is. Many of you probably have heard about the global youth statement produced by Yango, which is actually not the first year it's being written. And well, the regional youth statement is as we submitted in the very beginning, so how it was intended since the conference started. It's a representative position paper of youth demands to policymakers and community leaders in our region. So this is the mandate that has this statement, but actually, how do you prepare such a paper? So how do you involve youth in the region so that everyone can contribute, has the possibility to contribute, and finally you get a statement which is representative. So if we move to the next slide, we can see how we have been proceeding. So please, let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So the process started before we had the RCOI in Poland. So we started by, we had two different ways of collecting inputs. The first one was a form where people could submit their proposals, ideas in different kinds, shapes, lengths, and different levels of implementations. So policy proposals, practical implementations, even just technological proposals to make it understand what was the view that well, youth has from the region. But as well, there was one specific question in the delegates application form, which is how do you envision the region in the future? So what is your vision for Eastern Europe? And we used also this input, so this this form we collected, and based on these two forms of input, we were able to identify the key thematic areas as identified by those kind of forms. Then, if we move to the next slide, please, we can see what happened during the RCOI. So during the RCOI, of course, the process got like in the main phase. So we started on the very first day, which was which started in the afternoon. It was Friday afternoon. So we had this, let's say, brainstorming session with the delegates where we discussed about the identified thematic areas, but as well we made it possible to integrate them, modify them. So it was really a brainstorming session to get to know each other, but at the same time being productive to achieve this result, because you can imagine in 3 days we had to finalize the statement where we had only key areas. So after this brainstorming session, we had a long night to put all together into our very first draft. And then on the following days, on the first day, we had people divided in groups based on the thematic areas and what they were interested into. And they were feeding the draft with proposals, so solutions, not just problems or identifying the issues, but also giving proposals on what to do, how to do, and how to proceed. So in this way, on the second day, we achieved the second draft. And finally, on the last day, so on Sunday, we changed a bit the way of working in groups. So instead of simply dividing people into groups, we divided them based on geographic their geographic provenance. So for example, we had delegates from Ukraine, many from Poland, from the Baltic states, and we tried to divide them as close as possible to their geographic area. In this way, we had a common session where everyone was involved. So it was a common session and not anymore like divided into sub-working groups. And we were going through the entire statement together, each table having a geographic area and giving inputs, corrections, or proposals on the text which had to be agreed. And this was the way we obtained the final text, which you can read now. If we move on, so I can come to the conclusions. We after their COI, the process wasn't over, so we still had, first of all, to do the part of dissemination. So we had the statement, but what is the statement useful if we keep it for ourselves? We needed to share it. So we distributed it to our delegates, but also we had some online events. And then one important point was the translation. We have a region where, well, English is not the like main language of any of those countries, but we all worked in English. So the idea was to have this document translated into as many languages as possible from the region. We actually achieved some great results considered the time there was, and we obtained the version in Ukrainian, in Polish, in Czech, and I probably and also in Lithuanian. So we have finally the regional statement in 5 languages. The idea is to make it as accessible as possible, because not everyone knows English, not everyone knows English at a technical level. So it's very important to be able to communicate with policymakers, with stakeholders in an accessible manner, so that it's easy to speak with them. Then I move to the next slide so I can give the floor back to Diana. Yes. So what were the key themes of the regional youth statement that have been identified and addressed? You can read them in detail, but the general 5 key themes were those that you can see here on the screen. So empowering youth in climate advocacy, sustainable agriculture and food security, transitioning to renewable energy, post-war recovery and resilience, and climate peace and security. And thank you for hearing how the process was. And now the floor back to Diana.
Thank you, Vladi. Indeed, it was a document that, while reflecting on issues and problematics in the region, was positive in nature, suggesting some very practical solutions and thoughts on how to work with these problematics. I'd like to pass on the floor to Victoria Ball to reflect on how actually other youth initiatives can be positive solutions to these problematics, please.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to quickly shout out to anyone else in the room who's having a conversation at the back. If you're able to perhaps join the audience, please do. Otherwise, I will continue. So if we could have the next slide, please. So briefly, before we hand over our regional youth statement to our delegates, I wanted to share a story of success of how youth engagement can actually look like in an institutionalized format. So in Poland, in a few years back, this is now 4 years ago, this was the last time that the Eastern European region had a COP presidency, so COP24 in Katowice. And this was a huge movement, it was a huge moment for the Eastern European climate movement, because we could mobilize in our region, and we could also hold our politicians accountable, because they were meant to be those ones who were the torchbearers of ambitious climate action. So I'm going to talk about the Polish Youth Climate Council, which was established in 2020. This happened very unexpectedly, but it was an example of youth seizing this unique opportunity and moment. There was a lot of media attention to this Eastern European COP in Katowice in Poland, and essentially a United Nations youth climate delegate was talking to one of the Polish climate ministers, and they recommended the creation of a youth climate council. And since this was an opportunity, well, for essentially the minister couldn't say no. He couldn't say no in front of the media that youth inclusion is useless. So young people then followed up and created the first gathering for youth dialogue with the COP24 president at the time. So representatives of different climate networks gathered, and they started looking at other models that were existing in other countries in Europe. And they took the Danish Youth Climate Council model, and this was adapted to the specific context of Poland. As we know, whatever initiative and expertise we tried to, take on board always must be adapted to our local context. And next slide, please. But what is a Youth Climate Council, and what is it actually for?
So this council in Poland was made up of 32 young people, young and committed young people who wanted to co-create climate policy in Poland and actively work on climate protection. So Poland has 16 voivodeships, and these are like the name for the Polish regions. And each of the regions has at least one representative of the Youth Climate Council. And the term in office of the council under the Ministry of Climate is 2 years. So the Youth Climate Council aimed to increase the participation of young people in shaping and implementing public policies. And while climate and energy was the focus, we know that they also held consultations on social policy, agricultural policy, because we know that climate affects every sector, and also likewise, every sector must contribute to delivering climate ambitious actions. So, so as a result of the creation of this Youth Climate Council, youth had an active part in legislative processes and implementing political frameworks. This was done on a ministerial level. So whatever new laws were coming through, they had to go through the Youth Climate Council, which was unprecedented. And they had an amazing range of young experts, ranging from young people who were 15, 16 years old to people who were just starting out as, leaders in their fields, from energy to agriculture to academia and so on. So next slide, please. And as for the biggest achievements of the Youth Climate Council, there was a great focus on capacity building of young people, and this included this creation of climate education plans. This involved engaging experts, professors, students, and it was achieved through extensive consultations with universities, but also at other levels of education, primary, secondary, and high school. As part of these consultations, which also involved civil society in the form of NGOs, even the Fridays for Future climate justice movement, around 80 climate lesson plans were developed. And in the end, teachers were also trained together with youth representatives, led by youth representatives and the ministry, to hold these voluntary workshops for anyone who wanted to learn about climate change and how they could successfully be part of implementing climate policy together. Now, we have to recognize that this is a huge achievement because this is the first ever Youth Climate Council in Eastern Europe, and considering the challenging context of Poland at the time, and while the recent election in Poland has brought hope to civil society, there are still many challenges that remained with the conservative government in power. Besides the climate education focus, young people have been increasingly included in national delegations in Poland. So they started out with something like just 2 people at COP25 in Madrid. And then at the next COP26 in Glasgow, already 5 people. And now this year at COP28, 7 young people are included in the official Polish delegation. And I mean, I just have to say that I personally find this really amazing, and I really hope that we can have this these processes, consolidated not just in Poland, but in all countries in Eastern Europe, because this is really lacking. And while perhaps there are many sort of successes that we're seeing in Poland, we need to keep in mind that we constantly need to be reviewing these processes and continuing the conversation of how effective and how meaningful are actually these processes. Are youth who are underrepresented being, for example, funded to go to these negotiations, and like, is there capacity building being funded in order for them to effectively take part in negotiations and lobby for youth interests? So I think on that note, I will end my short presentation. I hope it might serve as inspiration for all of our countries in Eastern Europe, and I'll hand back to Diana.
Thank you, Victoria. Indeed, this is yet not the end of the discussion, but we want to come back to the youth statement. The outcome of the conference is something that was done so that not only to share it with general public, but in fact to pass over to the governmental representatives. And I'd like to identify if Stella Papa is with us in the audience, and Yulia Morozova, the representative of the Ministry of Protection of Environment and Natural Resources of Ukraine. Please join us on the stage, and we would like to hand over the youth statement to you all together, us, the organizer, original. Perfect. We still have all the examples of the original youth statement. Maybe we'd like to use it at a photo op. Thank you very much. And the representative of Moldova, I trust we will find a way to pass it over to her. But thank you, Yulia, for joining us. Do stay with us for some while. We have a participant. I invite everyone to take a seat, and maybe you, Yulia, would like to have a seat next to us. We do have also one more speaker with us participating online, and maybe our tech support team can, sorry. If Vladkim is not available online, well, with that, in such case, we would like to address the question to Yulia, and we're happy to support with translation as well. So this outcome of the conference itself, all the work that preceded building the days of the conference are of an importance to us, but also as a reflection of participants for them as well. A very simple question that I guess all of us wait to hear answered with excitement is, how can we take it forward? What can we do furthermore with the outcomes of this conference? And what could be expected in terms of our collaboration to make sure that the results of the conference don't just stay? Thank you.
Всім доброго дня. Мені дуже приємно бути на сьогоднішньому заході і отримати цю заяву.
Thank you so much, and I'm really glad to be participating in this event and receive this regional youth statement.
Я хочу сказати, що саме молодіжний рух має найбільший вплив на формування кліматичної політики і не тільки кліматичної політики в нашій країні. І мені дуже тішить, що на сьогоднішній день цей рух збільшується. І я хочу вам побажати успіхів в подальшому, і щоб ваша заява так само дійшла до потрібного, зайняла потрібну нишу формування і реалізації кліматичної політики.
So in fact, young people are those who have been having perhaps the most impact on climate policy recently, and not only climate policy as well. I really hope that the demands of the regional youth statement have great outreach and reach all the right stakeholders. Oh yes, and in order to influence climate policy.
Моєму сину 16 років, і я знаю, що для нього немає кордонів, коли він чогось бажає. Тому я вірю, що у вас є оця рушійна сила, що для того, щоб Україна стала процвітаючою, нейтральною країною.
So my own son is 16 years old, and whenever he is determined to, when he sets out to do something, he is always really determined. And I know that you as young people will be this driving force for change, for a flourishing and climate neutral Ukraine.
Сьогодні нам треба формувати кліматичну політику разом для того, щоб завтра ми так само її разом реалізовували.
We need to be formulating climate policy together. Just like in the future, we need to be implementing this climate policy together.
До того, як прийти на сьогоднішній захід, я ознайомилася з цією заявою, і кожен пункт цієї заяви є дуже важливий в формуванні і реалізації нашої політики. Тому я дуже вдячна за вашу роботу, і ви надаєте нам натхнення.
Before this event, I looked through the regional youth statement and all the demands, and all of them are really important and strong. And I really hope. And I just want to say that you are giving us a lot of inspiration, and thank you for all of your hard work that you've put into it.
Дякую.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pani Julia. Maybe I would like to reflect just a short thing from my own perspective, but maybe my colleagues will support this. Our presence here, the possibility to be fully engaged in COP events and all the happenings that are taking place throughout all the pavilions and all the zones really wouldn't be possible without the support of the official delegation of Ukraine. And we would like to once again thank you for our presence here. We very much hope in future this tradition of having strong youth representation of the part of the delegation would be still present.
Yes, and actually we are running ahead of schedule. So going a little bit quickly, perhaps. In fact, our colleague from Moldova, Vladislav Kaim, who was last year the youth advisor on climate change to the UN Secretary General, he will be joining us in just under 10 minutes. So I was wondering whether perhaps the audience would like to engage in sharing some reflections on youth engagement in climate policy, perhaps in your country, or thinking about what we've been talking about, the regional youth statement, how you believe some of these demands could be implemented. Any thoughts in general? Would anyone like to take the floor? Any hands? Okay, no? One? I can pass you the microphone, 1 second.
Hi, I'm Veronika. I'm from Poland, and I'm here with 5P Foundation that's just started today. And I met today, Laszlo. And it was so nice to learn about your initiative. I've heard about it before, but I thought I heard about ELCO in Poland, and I didn't know that it was ELCO and it was at such a big scale. And first of all, congratulations for that, because it's really huge thing that you did. And I also got a look at your proposal, and it looks very you've put a lot of hard work there. Do you think that, my question to you maybe would be, because I also heard that there were 70 people at this event, which is an incredible number, especially taking into account that there were people from different regions. But do you think, what would be your take on how to approach people who didn't attend because maybe they didn't heard about it? Maybe these are the people who are not particularly interested in the climate because they don't feel that this is something related with war and peace, for example, or just that climate is not an important subject right now. And I'm talking especially about youth. Do you have any approach to that?
Thank you. Would anyone like to take this question? Vladi.
Yeah, I'll break the ice just giving one small input, but then I'll pass the floor to anyone willing to answer in a more comprehensive way. So what we have been trying to do, I have first of all to say that in general it was quite hard to deliver this conference. We had also some practical difficulties like logistic difficulties, so it wasn't easy. But in general, our very first idea was to involve people from before the conference. So sharing the online form, for example, to provide inputs, it was a simple way to contribute. So even those people that didn't want to, I don't know, come to Poland because it's far, or eventually they have other schedules, or simply didn't see this as that important. So they didn't want to spend, I don't know, for example, 3 days in Poland for the conference, they still had the possibility to submit some proposals, some inputs, which were evaluated into the regional youth statement. We also had some follow-up calls with our delegates, and as well, some of them had the opportunity, for example, to share the regional youth statement at the school level, especially those in high school. For example, the girl from Lithuania, if I remember correctly. So the idea was also, when talking with delegates, we were trying to pass the concept that this regional statement doesn't have to stop in Poland, in Warsaw. It had to go over, so to your community, to your your colleagues at I don't know, at school, at university, at work, for those that were already working. And in this way, it would reach many more people. So that was the idea. Of course, there is much more work to be done also at the beginning phase. So there are possibilities to involve even more people. So for example, if we had these sort of events even before COP, we could have collected even more inputs for the statement, and not just reaching them just after the conference. So yeah, I don't know who wants to say more, or if there's more questions.
I suppose I could add a little bit there on sort of, oh, sorry, yeah, the camera's there. I'll move to the other side. So, right, I just wanted to build up on what Vladislav has already said in terms of reaching young people who were not at the conference. So I just wanted to note as well that while we had most participants taking part in person, we also had people taking part online, and this really removed the barrier for those for whom it was challenging to get a visa. For example, we included people who came from Armenia, because under UN definition, Armenia is in the Eastern European region. And it was great to have this online moderator who was always there to support them and work with them. And we generally had, maybe aside from like minor technical difficulties, pretty good reviews from online participants as well. And with the work that has been going on since, we've had young people who are actually seem to be very passionate about the demands that they've created in the regional youth statement, who have been very engaged in creating the versions of the regional youth statement in their own languages. So we've already talked about like Polish, Lithuanian, and Ukrainian, and they are still keen on then disseminating it to their governments. We already have shared the regional youth statement with the ministry in Georgia as well. We know that the Ministry of Environmental Protection of Moldova has even endorsed the regional youth statement. And yes, I guess there's a lot of drive for young people to actually explain what this process was. And this means also organizing the next regional conference of youth next year. There are already very keen people, and we're very happy to share our experience about on how to organize such a conference and perhaps the lessons learned. So that's my answer.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Nurjana Stebis. I'm representing Climate Action Network in Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia. Thank you so much for the presentation. To add the context to my question is that we are witnessing this tendency that social justice movements realizing that we cannot be acting, like pushing the policies that we are aiming, like isolated. For example, there are many social justice movements, right? Like climate justice, gender justice, like labor rights, like many, many more. And the question is, what is the situation in Ukraine towards, like, do you have like one platform where people can unite toward like recognized and unrecognized crisis? And do you think this should be the next level of conversation as well? Because, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, which I am from, now the law on this foreign agent is being pushed, like so-called Russian law, like which is the copy paste of the foreign agent law. And then we have this tendency that we have huge civil society, but for example, climate society, they're like, oh, it is the deal of human rights people. I mean, those people who work for human rights and then they concern. So they're just, like they're just not that much involved. And then, but all this, the issue, I mean, the movements are connected with each other, right? And the problems and I guess like the crisis, the emergencies that we work, they are all like united, and it's like there should be holistic approach into the tackling these issues, but unfortunately there is no realization for that. And what do you think, like what are the tendencies in Ukraine, especially with the Ukrainian young people, like youth who are like very active in this? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. That is a complicated question. Diana, you wanted to comment on this?
Maybe not specifically naming a specific platform as you asked, right? But more of reflecting on what ARCOI was and how the event for us was intended as a platform for young people from the region to come and reflect on very many different issues, and how Vladi has presented certain very specific main themes have crystallized from these discussions. So you come to workshop, you come to a speaking event, and you listen and you get empowered by learning new information, enhancing your background of what you already knew before coming to the conference, talking informally and learning informally from your peers from different countries. How is it happening in your country? In my country, we have this and this challenge. How do you tackle this? We tackle it this way. And in such way, many of the points were peer-to-peer learning, really, and possibility for young people to exchange thoughts and exchange on practical aspects to those problems and issues. And indeed, multilateral approach and reflection and recognition that there are very many aspects to the same challenge with biodiversity loss, conservation of nature, protection of nature, the climate change issues, all of these subtopics, right, of gender justice, and many aspects under the justice umbrella. There was a possibility to use a conference as a platform to discuss all of these, bring very different professional backgrounds, because after all, we talk about youth, but youth are young professionals. And we talk about them coming together to reflect on all these local contexts that they bring in with their own experience and background as professionals. And then by learning from one another, really reflecting on all these topics, we were able to adequately reflect that in the youth statement, because let's say very specific themes were more common for everyone else and were more prominent and deserved more vivid space in the youth statement.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I was just wondering whether Miss Stella Popper has joined us from Moldova. No, okay. So I was just also wanted to ask whether Valeria would like to comment on. No, okay. Just reflecting on our work together with Valeria, we are one of we're representing one of the initiatives that were co-organizing the conference, and you can see the logo there in Ukrainian, Rozvi, a new Ukrainian youth climate initiative focusing on inclusion of youth in Ukraine, specifically in Ukrainian climate policy. We understand the lack of this civic space, which addresses all these different, let's say, crises and different, social issues that also are, part of this complex issue of climate justice. So we are planning some projects, for example, in collaboration with the Ukrainian feminist movement, because we know that they have in the past talked about environmental justice, and this is something that we really want to build upon. And I think ARCO Eastern Europe was really useful for us for creating these connections that will then enable for us to build these intersectional alliances. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Kasia, yes?
No, I just wanted to say that I really, really appreciate like everything that you guys are doing. And I also wanted to say thank you to the Ukrainian team responsible for the pavilion, responsible for the delegation as well, because I think like this is an amazing moment that like the European youth and also like European youth from the Eastern Europe is actually mobilizing. And that's great that we can share experiences, that you guys are so active and that you're reaching out, that you're discussing how to institutionalize your engagement, even though it like the challenges are enormous and you're in such a difficult condition as well. So I think that's really amazing that your energy and your mobilization did not stop despite the war and like the horrific things that you are going through. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. And yeah, I think like I just wanted to like reassure you that like I think like Poland, like especially like I'm from Poland myself, so I can say that like I'm like more than happy to also support you guys and like share any experiences that we can, and also like reassure the Ukrainian delegation that like they can rely on like examples from Eastern Europe which worked. So I think like they can easily work in Ukraine, and once you also join the EU, like it will be even easier. So it will be an amazing path to that. Thank you guys once again.
Thank you so much, Kasia. So just for a bit of context, Kasia is someone who was instrumental in the co-creation of the Youth Climate Council in Poland that I was talking about earlier, and we're kind of in dialogue at the moment to understand her experiences and the experiences of the Youth Climate Council in her home country, to see whether we can implement a similar model in Ukraine. So look out for a lot more exciting youth engagement news from Ukraine, perhaps at the next COP. So I'm not seeing our Moldovan colleagues join at all, sadly. So I wonder whether I will pass on to Diana to round up the conversation.
Indeed, it's a very big outcome to have come to a conclusion of the conference with a document that represents voices of youth of the region. I can tell you, I myself, and there is a difference between millennials and Gen Zers, I'd say. I'm always very thankful for the opportunities, because I know 10 years ago when I graduated university, there were no opportunities like ones today. And I know that for future generations and for the coming years to have strong structures in place to make sure that young people from the region that actually have often very much less opportunities than, let's say, our counterparts in Western Europe or some other regions of the world. We need to continue the work, making sure we build the structures and we create the spaces like Regional Conference on Youth in Eastern Europe for young people of the region, young people from Ukraine, to come, exchange thoughts, make sure that we build partnerships and alliances and work together on establishing stronger ties and developing the region jointly. I'm very happy to see very much progress happening already. This conference definitely was one of the manifestations of what's already happening in the region and the progress that keeps us all very hopeful. I'm very happy again to say that we made it. It was a beautiful experience of learning what's out there in the region. I thank you for taking the time to join us to discover what was taking place during those 3 days in Warsaw. And I hope this inspires you to keep on supporting very many initiatives that are happening in the region in youth. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.